How's everyone doing today? It's your boy JJ Domination, and here we are, ladies and gentlemen. It's Wild Card Weekend. This video will be coming out on Friday. Wild Card Weekend, of course, starts on Saturday and bleeds into Sunday with the NFC Wild Card matchups. Today, we're going to be starting off with our very first matchup, Saturday afternoon on the East Coast. Buffalo, who happens to be the 5th seed, will be going into Houston to take on the AFC South champs, the Houston Texans, who are the 4th seed. Now, in this matchup, my marquee matchup for the game is going to be Tre'Davious White versus DeAndre Hopkins. Tre'Davious White has played like almost 600 snaps in coverage and has allowed 0 touchdowns this year. Very impressive. Arguably the best corner in football. I know you have Stephon Gilmore over here for the Patriots. I would dare say Tre'Davious White is giving the man a run for his money. However, with DeAndre Hopkins, this year it's been all about Michael Thomas, breaking the receptions record and, getting a lot of yardage as well. And statistically, Michael Thomas has been the best receiver in the league, but I feel like people are starting to forget about DeAndre Hopkins a little bit. That dude's a beast, and I think he'll show us on Wild Card Weekend. Looking at both of these teams, though, Buffalo... They're a real physical football team. Obviously, they can run the football. Josh Allen is, occasionally going to give you a couple of big plays a game. And this game, will he be able to? Maybe. I think this would be a great spot for him to. This, of course, is Josh Allen's, this is his first playoff game, if I'm not mistaken. 3 quarterbacks are going to be making their playoff debuts this weekend, and Josh Allen happens to be one of them. He's had a pretty good year too. I mean, he was still a little hot and cold at times. He had a streak where he was really good, and then he kind of died down around that Baltimore game. Maybe in this game it could be the start of something. Houston, they do have a talented secondary, but it's one that's kind of being pieced together, and a lot of them are hurt half the time. But a big key injury to look out for is Will Fuller. Will Fuller, it's being reported, at wide receiver for Houston, it's being reported that he is a long shot to play, so it's not looking good for him. He, of course, is the deep threat wide receiver for this offense. He's the guy, in my opinion, that opens up Houston's offense. And if he's not ready to go, that's a bad sign right there. But I will be taking the Houston Texans to win. And I do want to preface that these don't count towards my regular predictions. These are just pick'ems, like whatever. I'm not doing playoff predictions and all that. No, we're just going to go week by week. I will do scores for the hell of it, though, just for fun. So you'll see like a little graphic on the screen of a score. But I am going to be taking Houston to win, and I'm going to be picking Houston 24-17. We're not going to get too sexy. I'm going to have Houston winning 24-17 against the Buffalo Bills. I think the difference maker will be the run game. Carlos Hyde going up against this Buffalo Bills defense. Their defensive line could dominate this game, but I think if Carlos Hyde can just be consistent with the run game, I think the Houston Texans will be okay. I think it opens up parts of the field. Buffalo, depending on the matchup, hasn't really been good in run defense this year. This may be a favorable matchup, but like I said, if Carlos Hyde can just rip off a couple of decent runs, I think the Texans will open the field up even more. Now we get to the Saturday night main event right here for the AFC wildcard matchups. The Tennessee Titans, 9-7, one of the hottest teams in football, goes into Foxborough on wildcard weekend to take on the New England Patriots at 12-4, who won the AFC East to no one's surprise, and of course Tennessee, the 6th seed who got in. Tennessee, like we said, one of the hottest teams in football. I think they've won like 7 out of their last 10 or something like that. Tennessee has been red hot ever since Ryan Tannehill has entered the lineup. This offense has been, it's done a complete 180. It's not the stale, boring offense that was Marcus Mariota at quarterback. Ryan Tannehill is averaging like the most yards per attempt and most yards per play. Like, this offense can really move the ball, especially if they're clicking early. And of course you got Derrick Henry, who can pound it in the run game. It seems like every other week he's having a big time game. He just had over 200 yards against the Texans run defense, who at one point in the season was actually pretty good. Yeah, he just ran all over him. The Patriots, their run defense is kind of meh, middle of the road. I think if Derrick Henry has a big game, they might be in trouble. And of course, the matchup to look out for in this game, I would say, is going to be A.J. Brown versus Stephon Gilmore. You know, A.J. Brown, in my opinion, has made a good enough case to at least be one of the two possible Offensive Rookie of the Year players. I know a lot of people want it to be Josh Jacobs. A.J. Brown had 1,000 yards as a rookie receiver, 8 touchdowns. You look at his average yards per catch. I mean, the dude just makes a bunch of big plays. In the intermediate passing game, he can go deep. And to me, I think A.J. Brown is the Rookie of the Year for offense. But like I said, it's between him and Josh Jacobs, in my opinion. It could even be Kyler Murray, but we're getting off track. For the Patriots, you know, a lot of people, and rightfully so, are saying, you know, the dynasty could be fading away here. But, you know, I'm just going to say this once again. Every time we say that and we think that, the Patriots just come back swinging. The playoffs is just another day at the office for the boys, and I think the Patriots will find a way to win this game right here. I'm going to be going with the New England Patriots right here, 20-12. I think it'll be 20-12. I think Tennessee finds themselves kicking a bunch of field goals. The Patriots, I think, will just do enough to win. And it'll be like a situation where it's not convincing, but then again, I think they just hashtag do their job or do your job, whatever. I think, you know, outside of the A.J. Brown versus Stephon Gilmore matchup, I think the big difference will be Sony Michel. You know, last year we saw Sony Michel was running the ball effectively throughout the playoffs. He was arguably one of the best backs in the playoffs, and he was a rookie. I think if New England wants to have any sort of success, they need to run the football. Listen, Brady has like one of the highest, you know, quarterbacks in terms of pass attempts. You can't do that. You know, you can't rely on throwing it 50 times and throwing a bunch of checkdowns. Like, you're going to have to run the football. You're going to have to establish it. You look at the best teams in the playoffs, they run the football. New England, you're going to have to go back to what worked last year, and that's letting Sony Michel eat it up in the run game. Tennessee, you know, it's been a hell of a season. You know, you went 9-7 for the 4th straight time, but this 9-7 is a lot different from years past. You're actually a red-hot football team entering the playoffs. You didn't just backdoor your way in, so congratulations. Now we head over to the third matchup, and this would be the start of the NFC wildcard picture right here. The 6th seed Minnesota Vikings heading into New Orleans to take on the NFC South champions, the 3-seeded New Orleans Saints. Now, if you ask me, in my opinion, I think the New Orleans Saints are the most complete team in the NFC right now, and dare I say the most complete team in the playoffs. Both of their offensive tackles have not given up a sack. Well, let me tell you, they're going to be in for a hell of a test, because they're going to go up against Danielle Hunter, who I think is one of the better pass rushers in our league, and Everson Griffin, who is having a bounce back year in his own right. That's a hell of a duo for Terran Armstead and Ryan Ramczyk. We're going to see if they hold up against those two guys. That's going to be my matchup of this game. The Saints offensive tackles versus the Vikings pass rush. That's going to be the matchups for me, because this Saints duo at tackle has not given up a sack. Everson Griffin, one of the best quarterback pressure artists in the league, and Danielle Hunter has a pretty high sack total on the year. So you got two guys that can initiate and finish versus two tackles who have had a flawless season. Now, of course, for Minnesota, a lot of people still aren't convinced, you know, and I don't really understand why. I mean, I think Minnesota's a damn good football team. Kirk Cousins has answered a lot of questions for me. I've always liked Kirk Cousins, but I've never loved Kirk Cousins, you know what I mean? I've always kind of thought of him as a slightly above, kind of average guy, but he's answered a lot of questions this year. He's been one of the best quarterbacks on play-action passes this year. But I think most importantly, they are going to get Dalvin Cook back. Remember, he did miss the last 2 games. You know, in Green Bay, you know, second half kind of beat the brakes off of Minnesota. Not scoreboard-wise, but, man, it felt like a whole different game. in that second half. And then, of course, Minnesota benched basically almost all of their starters and almost beat the Chicago Bears. It's kind of embarrassing, actually. But now here they are, going into New Orleans to face the Saints. This is a tough matchup, man. And then, of course, you look from the Saints' perspective. Is this going to be Drew Brees' last season? Is he going to come back next year? You know, which version of Alvin Kamara are we going to get? Because Alvin Kamara has really been heating it up recently. He's been having some really good games. Michael Thomas, we know he's going to be a problem. Who's going to get that assignment? Are they going to put Xavier Rhodes out there against the more physical, you know, Michael Thomas? Or are they going to have to put, you know, Trey Waynes? Are they going to have to scheme up a double coverage of some sort? And what about Jared Cook? And what about the possibility of Taysom Hill having a couple of trick plays up their sleeve? I think the Saints might be a personnel mismatch for the Minnesota Vikings. And that's weird to say because the Vikings have a really good defense, in my opinion. And I don't even think it's just my opinion. I think it's just a fact. They have one of the best defenses in the league. Great personnel. But, man, I think I'm going to have to give it to the Saints right here. I think it'll be 31-24. That's the vibe I'm getting from this game. I think the Saints come out early and establish an early lead. I think the Vikings climb back into it, but I think it's too little too late. I think the Saints are the better football team, but do not be fooled by the 6th-seeded Minnesota Vikings. I know that they're the 6th seed in this particular matchup. But, man, let me go ahead and tell you, Minnesota, this is not a typical 6th seed. Like, if Minnesota faced Philadelphia, I'd probably lean towards Minnesota. But because they got the 6th seed, because they didn't beat Seattle, this is where they are. They drew the tougher matchup. I'll give it to the Saints. Now, here we go. This matchup right here, to finish off Wild Card Weekend, we have the Seattle Seahawks at the 5th seed. You know, with Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll and those boys facing the NFC East champions, a.k.a. the we barely got in the playoffs in a sorry-ass division, 4 seed, Philadelphia Eagles. Now, at the beginning of the year, I must confess, I was one of those people that bought into Philadelphia being the best team in football. It didn't quite happen that way, but they did have a lot of injuries along the way, a lot of key injuries. Carson Wentz's play was kind of poor towards the middle of the year. A lot of factors really went into why they're 9-7 and not one of the best teams in the NFC. Nonetheless, they're in the playoffs. This team has playoff experience, but the one guy who doesn't is Carson Wentz. Of course, the last 2 seasons he was injured heading into the postseason. You know, Nick Foles had that magical Super Bowl run in 2017, entering 2018. And then in 2018, entering 2019, they beat the Chicago Bears in Soldier Field to win a playoff game. They go to New Orleans, almost beat New Orleans, and who knows, if they would have beat New Orleans, do we think the Eagles could have beat the LA Rams? I would have gave them a puncher's chance to do so. That's in an alternative universe, though. Now we look at the other side, you know, with Russell Wilson and company. I think what Pete Carroll needs to do is just let Russell Wilson be Russell Wilson. Let him throw it all over the lot. It's a personnel mismatch with the wide receivers versus Philadelphia's corners, and that's actually going to be my matchup of this game, is Seattle's wide receivers versus Philadelphia's corners. You know, the Philadelphia Eagles, their secondary has been like a meme basically throughout the season. They have not played well. A lot of quarterbacks have some of their best performances against the secondary. But if that defensive line can get some pressure on Russell Wilson, maybe that secondary can cover up. Maybe some of their mistakes can get covered up by the pressure the defensive line is putting on them. Excuse me, I'm rambling on a little bit. But, you know, with no Dwayne Brown at left tackle for Seattle, it forces George Fant, who they use more as a swing tackle and a big tight end or whatever. It kind of forces him to play regularly. So, you know, that could be a big issue. You know, Philadelphia actually has a chance in this matchup, and that's the thing I like about that as well, is it feels like it can go either way. And also, these two teams played each other twice, or once already this year, so this would be the second time they play each other. Seattle won the first matchup, I think it was by like 7 points or something. Seattle has 10 wins by 7 points or more. So similar to Green Bay, they win a lot of these ugly, not close football games or whatever, and a lot of that has to do with Russell Wilson just doing his thing. A lot of it as well has to do with like the defense making a play at the right time. Like the defense could be trash for 3.5 quarters, but towards the tail end of that fourth quarter, they make the plays to give Russell Wilson another possession. I think that goes unnoticed as well. But going back to Philadelphia, Deshaun Jackson may be coming back, may not be coming back this week. Zach Ertz may be coming back, may not be coming back. The Eagles are limping their way into the playoffs, but they are at home. Carson Wentz is playing. Carson Wentz has been playing pretty good football the last month of the season. He's building momentum. I think this team is building momentum. Remember, it was only 4 weeks ago they were 5-7, and they've backdoored their way into the playoffs. I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to pick the Philadelphia Eagles at home to beat the Seattle Seahawks in a 27-24 game. I think Philadelphia does just enough to get past Seattle, and I'm going to predict that Philadelphia wins. It's probably not the smartest pick in the world, but with Philadelphia at home, they're going to have the crowd behind them. I think that defensive line is going to eat against Seattle's offensive line. But man, if that defensive line comes to play for Philadelphia, that secondary is going to be so thankful for it, because you got Tyler Lockett, who's still a beast. You have DK Metcalf, who's been heating up recently and has had a pretty damn good rookie season. You got guys like Malik Turner, who just come out of nowhere for Seattle. Of course, the Marshawn Lynch factor, like he could be featured more, he could not be. Could we see a Beastquake type of run? Who knows? But just to review, I got Houston winning, I have New England winning, I have New Orleans winning, and I have Philadelphia winning. So I picked all of the home teams to win their wild card matchups. Now, with that being said, 2 of them are going to lose. So let's just keep that in mind. I don't really think it works like that, where all 4 home teams win on wild card weekend, but that's what I picked to happen. I'm gonna stick with it. So hopefully you guys enjoyed, man. Peace out and happy wild card weekend.